Happy New Year! Let old acquaintance be. Oh, hey, hell, what's your New Year's resolution? It's probably given it up already. I'm really late. I'm sorry. I know we're way into January, but I'm just hoping it's not too late for my top 10 films of 2021. I was going to do a podcast wrapping up last year, but let's be honest, I think we're all just glad to move on from that dumpster fire year, pop it in the bin with a lot of the other years of recent memory, and instead focus on the good, namely, the good films I saw last year. And I do want to make a few notes right now. Number one, I live in Ireland. We don't always get films as fast as you. America, okay? So don't be like, oh, I saw this film 2 years ago. Well, I saw it last year. That's why it's on my list for my top 10 films of last year. I'm going by Irish release dates. I also should say, I didn't see every film I wanted to see last year. So if you're like, where's this film? I probably haven't seen it. And you know, if I haven't seen it, I can't put on my top 10 films I had seen last year. You know, it just kind of would defeat the purpose. And then I should also mention that I found the order of these really tricky. So if you're like, oh, I would have put this film over this film, sure, I probably would have too. This is just really tricky to put them in order. Although I do think towards the top of the list, they're maybe a bit more set in stone. But we're not starting at the top of the list. We're starting right down the bottom with my 10th favourite film of 2021.
Arthur Howitzer Jr. transformed the series of travelogue columns into the French Dispatch.
Wes Anderson is someone whose work I can be a little bit hot or cold on at times, but I'm always interested to see what he's working on. I think for me, sometimes his films just sort of drag a little bit, and that the style and the tropes can just sort of wear out their welcome with me. And I also find like the quirkiness in some of them are just a little bit overbearing. It just feels a little bit too saccharine for my taste. But I think because of the fact that it was an anthology, the French Dispatch managed to avoid a lot of those problems for me. It just felt a lot fresher and breezier than some of his other films. I thought it was a lot funnier than I expected it to, and the cast were amazing. It's got an ensemble cast, and of course, because it's an anthology, they kind of pop in and out. And because of that, it felt like we got a lot of room for variety here that really suited his style. Of course, as you expect from a Wes Anderson film, the cinematography was excellent, the costume, production design and music were also on point. And a lot of people are sort of saying that this is a lesser Wes Anderson film, and maybe it was just because I was pleasantly surprised, but for me, I enjoyed it enough that I made my top 10.
Diana, for the good of the country.
If you told me at the start of the year that one of my favourite films was going to be a film about Princess Diana and the royal family, I probably would have laughed at you. But here we are, because what really appealed to me about this film is that it's not what you expect. It's not another stuffy costume drama or a biopic. Instead, it's a very human story about a woman in a failing marriage and the struggles that bring on her. And I think what's also interesting, of course, is that it's all amplified by the fact that she is in the public spotlight and that her in-laws are the royal family. And as much as it kind of makes a strange situation normal, it's still a very strange and weird film. There's a lot of fantastical elements in depicting the story. There's some sort of psychological horror elements. It kind of reminded me of Black Swan at times. And surely that's going to upset and horrify royalist purists. But for me, I was endeared to the film because of this. I found it a lot more interesting. I think it also had a really very good naturalistic look to the film, which helps cement the idea that this is a very human, very relatable story, and also helps us relate to Diana. And I know it's been pretty controversial that they kind of depicted her anxieties and her struggles, which I think, honestly, we're probably more accepting of now than people were at the time. And I think that's why it's important, even though it might be uncomfortable for people to see the princess depicted in such a way. This is directed by Pablo Lahrain, who also directed Jackie. And I will say I probably preferred this to Jackie as much as I did like Jackie, because I really feel like this gave us a better idea of that central character that we can relate to, and really just made her feel like a really human person like the rest of us. And I think once you nail that, it makes her a very good film. I also can't say enough about Kristen Stewart's performance. If she has any doubters as far as her acting ability goes, I think she can just point to this and shut them up quickly.
Will they kill me, do you think?
I say before all of you, I spoke the truth.
Dear Ridley Scott, it's me, a millennial who saw The Last Duel. I understand I'm a bit of a unicorn in that regard, although I don't think it's just millennials who didn't see it. I don't think anyone really seemed to see this film, which I don't know why people are surprised by this. I mean, I don't think the masses were crying out for a 2.5-hour historical epic with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon in 2021. And certainly the hardcore film most might have avoided because it would be a pretty uncomfortable watch. And yeah, at times it is. This is, of course, a return of the writing duo of Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, this time joined by Nicole Holofcener, for a film that is very timely and also massively aware that it's timely. I mean, some of the dialogue is written and performed with tongue so firmly in cheek that I'm surprised the tongue hasn't burst through to the other side. Lines like, oh, if you defile a woman, it's not a crime against the woman, it's a crime against the man because the woman is the man's property, which, oh, very, very subtle there. Yeah, it's very much a Me Too story. It's about a woman who is raped, and we see the event from 3 different perspectives. From the perspective of her husband, from the perspective of the alleged, and from the perspective of the victim, her. And I feel like that very easily, seeing the kind of same film 3 times, could very much have been overbearing. But I do think it really worked. I do think this is an excellent film. As much as I think the obvious comparison is Rashomon. Rashomon was at least brief. But I do think as much as the film could easily have been a slog, I think it managed to avoid it. I think this is actually one of Ridley Scott's best films in recent memory. And as much as it is slow, there is brevity to be had. Especially from Ben Affleck's character, who, I mean, geez, as I said, there's modernity to this film. But speaking of modernity, he could have been a douche from any period in time. I thought his character was rather amusing, and it's so bad it's good, so hateable he was that it was kind of entertaining. And I think it feels very relevant to modern times, which helps the film a great deal. The performances are also excellent. Adam Driver and Jodie Comer, especially Comer was fantastic in this, if I am saying her name right. But I think she's being really overlooked at the moment. But I thought she gave a really emotional and harrowing performance that really made the film something that kept you gripped for better and for worse. And like I said, it is quite a slow film. But I think that what really speaks to the film's success is that by the time it does get to the last duel at the movie's end, that you are totally invested and anxious to see the results. And I think that is why this film worked. The release dates for this film were kind of all over the place. I saw it at a secret screening at the Dublin International Film Festival. And it's a film that definitely manages to navigate the 2 tones that the premise demands, that being comedy and drama, because the idea that just the right amount of alcohol will improve your life and make things way better is, of course, initially going to lead to a lot of comedy and humour. But as we go on, it ends up being quite dark and quite sad. And it seems like a very obvious trajectory, but thankfully the film doesn't really come down on either side, and it's the better for it. It so easily could have been a pro-temperance movie, and it's not that. It's a film instead that has a sort of a secret depth worth exploring about making the most out of the life you have and, you know, taking chances when they're there so you don't regret it later in life, and making decisions, you know, not to the detriment of yourself or others. And there is that sort of secret depth that makes the film quite endearing and at times inspirational. The 4 leads in the film I thought were fantastic. I thought they played off each other really well. They had really good chemistry. They just seemed like real friends. Mads Mikkelsen, of course, is our main character, who, look, he's very charismatic and more than capable of carrying the film on his own. Apparently they're remaking this film in the English language. I don't know why you would, because I think they got it right the first time around. Damn, I should have said they don't need another round.
This depiction is dangerous.
Come on, ain't it?
I'm cutting it.
Speaking of tonal shift, this was a film I knew very little about when I went to see. A psychological horror film set in England during the video nasty era, which, if you're not aware, it was like an era when people were really worried about, you know, horror films now being available on home video and the effect that could have on people and who would be seeing it. So they started to censor and ban a lot of films because they were worried about the effect it could have on the general public. And our lead character is one of those censors. So there's a sort of innate contradiction there of people shouldn't be seeing this, but also one person is going to see all of it. And of course that's going to start affecting them as we kind of uncover her own trauma as she watches these movies. And also she starts to find links to her own past, which is fascinating to watch. Our lead character is played by Niamh Algar, who is excellent. She's actually Irish, and I reviewed a film she was in a couple of years ago, and though I didn't care for the film, I said she was great in it. And it's good to see her go on to bigger and better stuff like this, because I thought she absolutely nailed the role here. I also have to give a lot of credit to Prano Bailey Bond, I believe her name is, who co-wrote and directed this film. It's her first feature film. And she just did an excellent job. It really is one of those movies that feels like they did a lot with very little. I love the setting and the concept, you know, just this grimy kind of horror film set in the video nasty area is just such a cool idea. Visually, I thought the lighting was really cool. I thought they made some great choices there. And I really think they did a good job with some of the effects. I mean, the effects were effective. And maybe aside from one moment, I felt looked a little bit amateurish, which I won't say for spoiler reasons. But it is one of those movies that I just thought was really, really strong. It was an effective and creative throwback horror film, and was certainly one of my most pleasant surprises of 2021. I'm not sure I can say this one was a pleasant surprise. Julia Ducournau's latest, she gave us Raw in 2016, which I absolutely loved. And now she's back and given us this film for which she won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, which made her the first solo female director to win the Palme d'Or. And also, I have to hand it to Cannes. Any preconception that people had that you were this pretentious film festival is now totally gone after giving this film the Palme d'Or. I don't think I can give any explanation or summary for the film that makes sense or does it justice. I guess genre-wise, ironically, it probably fits most comfortably into body horror. It's very Cronenbergian in that regard, but it's absolute insanity. I don't think I've ever had... It's definitely one of the best cinema experiences I've ever had, though. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard an audience so audibly wince watching a film. And it's also the first time where I kind of stereotypically had to watch through the cracks of my fingers because I wasn't sure I wanted to watch, but I had to see what was going to happen. I think I felt every human emotion watching this film, from laughing to nearly crying to being disgusted, mesmerized, and yeah, any emotion you can think of, I probably felt it watching Titane in the cinema. It also is strange because, as weird as it is, it has all these real human emotions about loss and acceptance and love, all in a movie with car sex. And yeah, that's not sex in a car. Wherever your mind went there is probably accurate. It's a movie that's going to shock and appall so many people. It's undoubtedly a weird, extreme horror film that won't be to everyone's taste. I mean, don't take your mother to this saying, hey, this won the Palme d'Or, because you won't be able to look her in the eye again. But I, for one, loved it. And I also often say that an actor gave a fearless performance, and I've got to retire that phrase because the bar has been raised by Agatha Rosell in the lead role, who was just amazing. I have to also give it to Vincent Lindon, who was in the film. He does a great job as well. I do think overall I preferred Raw because it was a bit cleaner. This is like a chaotic mess, and I love it for it. But yeah, I always say I love a piece of cinema that feels unrestrained, and I love when I can see a film and genuinely say, I've never seen anything like this before. And honestly, I don't think I ever have or ever will see anything like Titane again.
But she's not there.
I'm not Puerto Rican.
Is that okay?
Do you want to start World War III?
Mandatory fuck Ansel Elgort, and we're moving on. Of all the musicals that came out this year, and there were quite a lot, I kind of struggled between this one and Tick Tick Boom to put in my top 10. And maybe it was just because one was on streaming and one was in cinemas that this one kind of stood out to me, because Steven Spielberg finally made a musical, and boy did he deliver. Something I feel like a lot of musicals have missed this year and beyond is a sort of a scale, and this really had that. It had a wonderful classic quality to it that felt updated at the same time. It just was a big musical epic, which you don't really get anymore, and based on the box office performance, we might not get for a while. But I should say, of course, the music is important when it comes to the musical, and of all the musicals that came out this year, this is the one whose soundtrack I listened to the most. I should also highlight the cast, who I thought were excellent. They're mostly unknown, but especially I should commend Rachel Zegler as Maria, who I thought was tremendous, and what a great find. Apparently she's a YouTuber, which, you know, Stephen, hey, if you need someone for your next film. But wow, she was excellent in the film. The movie had such great choreography and cinematography that really helped lend itself to watching a musical on the big screen. And despite its long running time, it really flew by for me. Despite the fact we all know the story, that didn't bother me either because it was so tremendously done. It really did just feel like pure classic cinema.
A lot of your tenants have been struggling, sir. There's already been some cases of starvation.
Nonsense. Crops have failed before and mortality levels have been perfectly acceptable.
It's going on Trí Bhean na Gaeilge í seo. I'm not subtitling this whole thing, fuck that. This is an Irish film, and I can't imagine in many other years that an Irish film would be my top 3, but here we are. I'm always very skeptical when I see an Irish film being lauded because it kind of feels like a home field advantage. Oh, like the Irish media says this Irish film is really, really good. And I thought that would doubly be the case when it's spoken in the Irish language for most of the film. But thankfully, I was wrong. This was an excellent film about an Irishman whose life is sort of torn apart by the famine. And what I really enjoyed is that it wasn't a film about the famine like so many other people would have made it about. Instead, it was someone who just happened to be living his life during the famine. It's about someone who kind of loses everything but finds someone who gives him a bit of hope. I think the obvious comparisons people are going to make will be Logan, which of course was heavily inspired by Shane. And I think if you see the film, you will understand why that is. I do think that it was a film that really was unapologetically dark, and they made the most of their very modest budget. I thought the cinematography was great. It had some very interesting shots. I enjoyed the music. This is a first-time feature director, I believe, Tomás Súilleabháin. I thought he did excellent. Our lead actor, Don Lohealy, I think he has a very bright future if the right people see this film, which hopefully they will. It was just a film that I had pegged and was totally wrong about. It just proved me wrong with a film that was a very accurate and emotional portrayal of life during the famine. And I think because of that, it's something that a lot of people will connect to if they get a chance to see it.
I'm looking for a truffle pig. Someone stole her.
I don't understand.
Well, as if this list wasn't full of enough surprises, a Nicolas Cage film is my second favourite film of last year. It's strange. It feels like every year or two he decides to do a film to say, like, see, I could act if I wanted. And thankfully that means that we got Pig, a film he is excellent in. This is probably one of his best performances in a long time. And it's a film that really defies your expectations and is well aware that it's doing that, because the plot of the film is that a man has his truffle pig stolen, and that kind of, made it the laughingstock of the internet for a while, because we all thought we knew where this was going, that it was going to be this explosion of John Wick action and violence. And though it feels like it might get close at times, it never gets really near it or never crosses over that line. And the film is better for it. And that's really going to piss off some people that feel like they've maybe been a bit cheated. That instead they got this slow sort of meditative film that has a certain zen quality about a man trying to cope with loss. And yeah, that's really interesting, especially given the fact that it's Nicolas Cage, who generally turns all his performances up to 11 and is over the top in everything. And I think that actually works in the film's favour, because it means the fact that he is sedate and sorrowful, it really makes his grief feel all the more sincere. And yeah, it's a film that doesn't have a lot going on as far as action or story. I mean, it's a story structure we're familiar with by now. It's quite simple. But it allows it to focus on character, and that's where the film excels. Because as we go on the journey with these characters, especially Nicolas Cage's character, we learn a bit about who this man was and what he's lost and what he's kind of building towards to a certain degree. And it's a really fascinating character study. It's a really well-directed film. Alex Wolff from Hereditary is in it as well. He also does a fantastic job, but of course the spotlight is firmly on Nicolas Cage, who is great in the film. It just kind of felt like reading a good novel, and it also had a sort of poetic quality to it. It's just a movie that I really enjoyed. I thought was very refreshing and interesting, that put a very great character at the forefront.
I think it's important that you stay here with us right now, Ruben. We're looking for a solution to this. Not this.
Okay, I don't know when this film came out. I know you couldn't watch it in Ireland or most of Europe till 2021, which is when I saw it. So, take it to the comments if you want to complain about this amazing film. Riz Ahmed continues to make really interesting choices as an actor. Here he plays a heavy metal drummer called Ruben who loses his hearing, which on paper, I was like, this seems very prone to a bit of melodrama and a little bit Oscar baity. But in execution, it's nowhere near that, really. It was instead a very real and raw film that had a sense of verisimilitude to it that really worked. It's probably a career best performance for Riz Ahmed. He's really good as this character who at times really isn't likable, which helps us believe that this is a kind of a true story. Of course it isn't, but it does feel like it is, which is really, really important as you watch a character who is, coping with what he's going to lose and trying to find new happiness moving on from that part of his life, a life where he's not going to be able to hear properly again. And it's really full of emotional gut punches, but moments of triumph that are undeniably beautiful. As much as I have to praise Riz Ahmed, I also have to praise Olivia Cooke, who I thought was fantastic as his girlfriend. Paul Raci, who I thought gave a very interesting performance because, of course, he's doing most of it through sign language, but he was excellent in the film. The direction was awesome. I thought the script was fantastic. Something we don't often praise, the sound design was really, really good in this, which is vital for putting us in the shoes of this character as we go on this journey. And it was really interesting being in the shoes of a character that we might not always like, but also one that is on a very unclear journey. It wasn't just here's his arc, he starts sad, he ends up happy. It goes in a bumpy direction, which is what I found very interesting about it. It's honestly a film I can't really think of many complaints for. I only wish I could watch it again for the first time. And that is my top 10 of 2021. What do you think of my list? Do you agree with some of my choices? Do you disagree? Do you have your own top 10 list? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. Either way, if you did enjoy this video, be sure to give it a like. I really would appreciate it and it would really help us out. Also, if you do not want to miss our 2022 preview, which is hopefully coming very soon, be sure to press that subscribe button. We're going to talk about our most anticipated films. What looks good? What does not look good? What looks somewhere in between? Hint, most stuff. Either way, I've been your cult leader, Tom Pot. Please come back for more videos from us here at the Pop Cult Pod. And remember, I can't spell cult without you.